Hey there, I'm Beverly Sartain, and this is the Holistic Coach Legacy Podcast, where you get support in being an impactful and confident coach. In today's episode, you are going to hear a coaching demo between myself and Lianne, and I want to thank her so much for allowing us to use this coaching demo in the podcast. I also want to provide full disclosure that the audio of this coaching demo is not the best. There's a few times that it goes in and out, but the content of this coaching conversation was just too good for me to not share this episode with you. So, what I would love for you to listen out for is the use of a paradigm in service to a potential perspective shift. And in this particular coaching conversation, the paradigm is that how is more important than the why. So please listen in for how that paradigm supports Lianne in getting to her agreement. Many blessings for you for being here today, and thank you for listening in. Welcome, Lianne. Thank you so much for being with me today for this coaching conversation.
I'm really glad to be here.
Thank you. Anything that needs to be cleared before we hop into our call today?
No, I think I am in a good space to get started. So, yeah.
Wonderful. So, what would you like to focus on today that would be meaningful for you?
Well, something that would be really meaningful to me would be for me to explore the sort of state of inertia I keep finding myself in. And it's frustrating because this is an issue that comes up in my coaching conversations with clients. And I am only too happy to help coach them through their own management of inertia. And yet, when it comes to myself, I am far less effective. And I think there's something I'm not understanding or perhaps admitting about what's going on with me. So that's something I would really like to explore because I'm quite curious about it.
Well, I appreciate you bringing curiosity to it. And I really appreciate you bringing forward something that you help others with that now you are needing some support around. I think that's just a really great way to be as a coach, is to be aware of maybe where we're having a blind spot and bringing that forward so that we may work through it as well. So thank you for that. So as we get curious about the inertia, what is on the other side of this inertia for you?
You mean what would it look like if I wasn't experiencing inertia?
What's on the other side of inertia that you would like to be experiencing?
Energy used constructively in the support of things that are meaningful to me, but also balance. I fully understand that these really are challenging times, and I want to honor that. I recognize that that this pandemic is taking a toll on all of us. I find with myself, it's primarily mentally that I seem to be spending time, as we all are, figuring out how to remain safe um, while undertaking necessary actions in life. So I don't want to delude myself into thinking that this is normal and it's not a big deal, and I'm not allowed to use COVID as an excuse for some of the mental exhaustion. I would say it's primarily mental exhaustion and maybe emotional exhaustion that I'm experiencing. But I also don't want to give myself, I don't want to use this time ineffectively because I can't, I don't want to tell myself I can't do anything because COVID. That's, and there are days certainly when that's my narrative. I don't think that's necessary, and I don't think it's honest, and I don't think it's a good representation of how I want to live my life.
Mm-hmm. Well, I appreciate you admitting that to yourself in this moment. And I'm wondering what you do want to use that time for.
Well, I would say that the one area in my life that is suffering right now, in terms of, the commitment that I'm willing to make to it, is some work around my coaching practice that I could be doing. And for example, I've hired someone to help me with the social marketing aspects of my coaching practice, and she's working out really well. We have a great rapport. She very clearly gets what I'm asking of her and is 100% on board. And on Sunday, we're going to have our first of 3 training sessions. So she's going to be training me in how to use specific social marketing tools to increase, the visibility of my coaching practice. And I'm excited about that. And I'm excited that I finally gave in and said, I can't figure this stuff out on my own. And so let's hand this off to somebody who knows far more about this than I do. But at the end of the day, I'm the person who has to develop the content. This is my coaching practice, not hers. And so I could have been using this time while she's been working through her tasks, which, will come to fruition starting on Sunday. I could have been using some of this time to map out, what I want my use of social marketing to look like, and developing content and just making really concrete plans for the kinds of campaigns I may want to initiate, or am I going to continue with a blog format, or do I want to be looking at other ways of connecting with people in my network? But I haven't really done any of that. And I'm disappointed in myself, because when I hired this young woman, I knew that I was going to have about 6 weeks before she would be ready to meet with me and to start this training. And so 6 weeks ago, I said, great, let's commit to, some specific tasks that I can do between now and then, so that once I've been trained, I can, really run with it. But I haven't. And, part of me is like, oh my goodness, that 6 weeks went by really fast. Now, mind you, I had surgery somewhere. But the fact that I haven't done anything is just, it surprises me, and it disappoints me, and it frustrates me. And I find myself feeling like, oh, here we go again, yeah. I've been here before, and here I am again. Yeah. And that's kind of been the story of the past year. thinking I had time to do constructive things and to use in constructive ways, and then not following through on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I appreciate you acknowledging this pattern that you're seeing and experiencing. And I'm curious what's important to you about acknowledging this pattern now.
Well, honesty and transparency is always important to me. I mean, this much I do know about what's going on. I do know that this tends to be a pattern. I do know that mentally I can talk myself at, like, let's say I have an hour or two in a day with nothing scheduled. And I typically do have an hour or two in a day with nothing scheduled. And sort of the thought of using that time to sit down and do some mapping or planning or content development, it's just like, oh, no, my mind couldn't handle that right now. And yet it's no different on a day when when I don't have anything scheduled. It's like, hey, you have nothing scheduled. This would be a great day to, and I'm like, oh, but I've had such a busy week and whatever. So the value in acknowledging this is that I know this, and there's nowhere to hide from it, nor do I want to hide from it. This isn't new information to me. And that in itself is like the problem. It's like, this isn't new information, Lianne.
Mm-hmm. That's another good acknowledgement that it's not new information. So for the sake of our time together today, what specifically do you want to do with this information that would be useful for you?
I think the biggest obstacle I face in this is getting started. I think getting started is a really big deal. Okay, part of me thinks getting started is a really big deal. There's another part of me that thinks getting started isn't that big a deal. And I guess I'm looking for some support around that. If it's true that getting started isn't that big a deal, then how can I set myself up to act that way? So I tend to, if there's something that needs to be done, it always, and this applies to everything in my life, it always looks like such a big deal until I get started. And then it's like, oh, an hour's gone by and look at what I've accomplished. That's better than I expected. So I think if I had some sort of really practical strategy that I could use to get started, then I could prove to myself that fear around what a big deal this isn't a valid reason not to give it a try, not to do something. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So I think I'm looking for, I mean, this might sound complicated and like, oh, it's all in my, it's a big head thing for me that I've somehow conditioned myself to believe that doing work is hard. But I really think the way out of this is to come up with some almost pithy little strategies to prove to myself getting started isn't hard.
Can I share something that's coming in for me?
Sure. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, just using some of the direct communication here. I noticed when I asked you a few questions about what you wanted to create, both times you went to what was not working for you.
Yeah.
And I'm curious how that is getting in the way
Yeah.
of
That's
getting
powerful.
started.
Yeah, that's powerful.
What do you think about that?
Huh. I think that's a pattern as well. I don't really know what's behind it, but I know that it carries a lot of weight in my life. Um, hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I mean I do have a tendency to think things are harder than they really are. And I don't know how that serves me. I really don't.
Mhm.
It's serving something. Um, yeah. I don't know. Maybe it's protecting me in some way from achieving my full potential, because how awful would that be? And I'm laughing, but I think there's some truth in that.
I hear you. Mhm.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I think
what if the why behind it isn't as important,
right.
but the how you're going to do it differently
Yeah.
is?
Yeah, that's what I would prefer to focus on, because, you know, wrestling with the why would be yet another huge distraction for me that would, you know, prevent me from ever tackling the how. So and I also am a big believer in behaving my way out of, um, dysfunctional patterns, even thought patterns. So yeah, I would truly like to focus on the how.
Okay. So let me check back in with you then, because I want to make sure we're on the same page when it comes to you getting what you need to get out of our coaching conversation today. I know you mentioned you wanted a strategy for starting. And now I'm checking back in with you to see if that is still the case, or is there something else that you would like to get out of the coaching conversation today?
No, I think that really is what I want. I want to address the how am I going to change this, and the how I'm going to change this is by coming up with some things that I can do that aren't a big deal, um, that don't require a tremendous amount of thought, that I can, that I can just get started.
Okay. And so that we're clear about making sure you hit your target today, how are we going to know that you got those strategies for yourself?
Um, I'll know that by leaving this session with, one or two or three ways of activating the go button in when it comes to this stuff.
Okay. And what are you wanting to activate that go button around?
Getting started. Yeah.
With what?
With um with tasks that seem to me everything seems big and shapeless until I wrestle it to the ground, and then it turns out that all it required was a couple of, two or three steps to initiate the process. Um, so I guess what I'm saying is tasks seem big to me. So how do I break them into chunks, small, doable chunks? Like, instead of looking at a task as something that's going to require 4 hours, if I could look at it as, okay, well, let's say it will take 4 hours, but what can you accomplish in 10 minutes? That kind of thing would be, I think, really motivating for me and effective.
Okay, well, that's a great strategy already.
Yeah.
Is right, is instead of
Dang.
looking at it as it's going to take a very long time, I'm hearing looking at it in terms of what can I get done in a shorter amount of time that would feel meaningful for me. So that's a fantastic strategy.
And I'm thinking about, we did that Pomodoro thing, and I did that Pomodoro thing with you in the fall. And I'm wondering how I can apply that kind of thinking to, the work that I need to be doing. So I know, I think when we did the one in the fall, it was sort of planning out our work for 2021 was the overarching purpose of it. And then it was broken down into 3 or 4 or 5 segments of sort of sprints, right?
Yes.
Timed sprints. So I'm trying to visualize a way of taking that kind of a process and applying it to designing an email campaign, or some weekly content for my Facebook page. And I think probably that would work. That would be effective. I mean, I set timers all the time. The only way I ever get a clean house is by setting a timer. And timers are a good friend of mine. And so for the same reason, I mean, it gets me started, and I'm working against the clock, which is motivating. And I know it's not going to go on forever.
Yes.
Which is motivating. Yeah, I think something along those lines would be helpful. And I'm also thinking about my workspace and how I can prepare my workspace so that it's always ready to go. If I approach my workspace and there's stuff on my desk from yesterday or 2 weeks ago or whatever, then that's not very motivating. So I think I would also benefit from doing some work around my environment, the environment in which I work, and having a designated environment and ensuring that that environment is conducive to, let's go, let's hit play and set a timer and let's see what we can do here. So that's another thing I could be doing.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's another great strategy. So we've got the time, maybe doing a Pomodoro, which is that 25 minutes of focused time and attention towards a specific task to see what gets done. Then you're also talking about having your workspace, your environment be conducive to let's go and get started, which is great. And I heard the word motivating several times in your share. What's the strong connection to that word?
I think I'm unmotivated by disorganization. Surprise, surprise. And And tasks that seem big and unwieldy, I think it would also be really beneficial to me to spend some time, like maybe 20 minutes, organizing my task. If I need to come up with almost like a template, you know, sort of, why are you doing this? Who's your audience? What do you hope? What would you like the outcome to be of this particular piece of work? Just so that I'm, how long do you want it to be? Just so that I'm not just jumping into the deep end like I tend to do. I do tend to do that. I'm like, oh, I need to do this thing. And then I start trying to do the thing, and I haven't taken the time to create a framework around it so that it's less of a thing. So I think that piece as well. I think breaking things into manageable chunks and giving shape to what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, who I'm doing it for, and how this connects with my larger vision. And if it doesn't, then why am I doing it? And what would a good outcome be? Yeah, I guess what I'm hearing is I'm a bit of a disorganized mess when it comes to this stuff. I'm a very creative person, which is lovely, except that creativity doesn't always respond well to things like planning and frameworks, and yet in this kind of situation where I'm being creative for a purpose, it really needs to, that those frameworks and processes really need to be in place, and then the creativity will be even better and serve a better purpose. So
Great insight.
yeah, and this is so helpful to me because I see it. I see what I could be doing, and I would enjoy the work more if I would do these things. And I love what I'm doing, but I find it hard. So by putting these pieces in place, I would be making it less hard and more joyful. And that's worth a lot to me. That's very motivating.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Can I share something that's coming in?
Sure.
As soon as we started to talk about creating the framework that breaks things down into manageable chunks, you had an energetic shift into actually experiencing creativity and joy in the work.
Absolutely. And another thing that happened is I started smiling, and I haven't stopped smiling. Yeah.
What do you think about that?
I think that's the key. I think that's the key to being able to do what I truly love to do, and to do it well, and to do more of it. I think not having those pieces in place prevents me from doing the work that I really love to do, because it just seems so hard. So there's real freedom in creating those pieces and honoring them and using them. And I think if I can see it that way, that this these sort of, so it's not me being creative when I sit down to make a framework or a process, but by doing it and by honoring it, then I get to be creative in a way that will be unhindered by the thought of it making me tired because it's so big. So I'm excited about that. I really am. Yeah.
It's great to hear your process and how we can honor that this is part of your creative process.
Yeah.
And that by creating this process, you actually are preparing yourself mentally and emotionally and spiritually and physically to engage the work and make it meaningful and purposeful for you.
Yeah. And these sort of pedantic things open the door to some, potentially really beautiful stuff.
Right.
Yeah. No, this is really, really exciting for me, Beth.
Good. So with these discoveries, what might you take action on from what has come through for you today?
I will definitely, over the next couple of days, before I have my training on Sunday with Nicole, I will definitely organize my workspace better and create a framework for approaching tasks. And that framework will address, what is this? Who is it for? What's the format? What's the length? What's the desired outcome? And I think with those pieces alone, I could, okay, so I'll come up with that. I'll do that.
Mm-hmm.
Done.
Right, you did do it. Right. Great.
And then I'll test it out. I'll use it and see if, and also the timing piece. I think committing to 20-minute bursts of activity, focused activity, I would accomplish so much. Yeah. Because it is exhausting to spend 2 hours straight working on something. So.
And how will it feel for you to get more accomplished?
Oh, so good. So good. Because with the social media piece coming, that's been a big elephant in the room for me. So with that coming and this coming, yeah, look out. Things are going to happen. Definitely. And I also need to be thinking about what am I doing and why am I doing it? That's, that's an ongoing part of this as well. But I'm not afraid of that. And I think, I think this has been the biggest obstacle for me, is figuring out how to create a way to just get started. Hit the timer, go. And follow your process.
Mm-hmm.
Tidy up your desk when you're finished.
Yeah. And it's honoring your process. It's honoring your unique and creative way of approaching this process. And I really appreciate the insight that you just got to, because experiencing that joy and that purpose and that excitement is such an important part of putting ourselves out there on social media or creating clients in our coaching practice, or just expressing ourselves and our truth that we have received through our healing and recovery process. So that's such an important piece. Yeah.
And I am so joyful about that. I truly am. And so to create, a streamlined way of being able to take what's bubbling up inside me and get it out there, I
Yes.
think is really that's the reason for all of this. And I just, yeah, right now I just want to do it. I'm feeling very much like I can do this and I will do this. And here I come.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is the come from we want you to have
Oh,
when
yeah.
you're creating and you're putting yourself out there. So I'm so happy that you got to get to that place inside of yourself today. Um, any, just checking for accountability. I heard you say that you're going to have an opportunity to work through this process with Nicole um, before Sunday. And then when you meet with her on Sunday, is there any other accountability that needs to be put in place that would be helpful for you?
Um, Not that I can think of. I mean, I could say, well, check in with me in a week to make sure I've done it or something like that. I think, I think, yeah, I think the accountability needs to come from within because this is my journey. And if I'm not sufficiently motivated to do what I say I'm going to do, then that's a big problem. And I strongly feel the need to show myself that I really am serious about this because I know I am, and that you know, the problem isn't that I'm not motivated. The problem is that I didn't know how to do it. So now that I know how to do it, I think um, I truly believe I will do it.
Mhm.
And yeah, so I think that's my accountability strategy, is just to honor the work that you and I have done here today by doing it, by doing what I said I was going to do.
Mhm. Yeah, and I appreciate you bringing forward this topic because I find that that was a way that you've held yourself accountable
Mhm.
um, to work
Yeah,
through
you're right.
this.
That in
Mhm.
and of itself is an accountability factor. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's always the beauty of coaching is that these conversations bring some sense of accountability and ownership and responsibility
Mm,
to our process.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So let me check in with you. Did you get what you needed to get out of our coaching conversation today?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Because I knew it was sort of I, I knew where I wanted to get to. I honestly didn't know how that was going to happen. So I would say this has exceeded my hopes and expectations.
Beautiful. And what do you feel like was your biggest learning today?
I think my biggest learning today is that it doesn't require all that much of me to get things set up so that I can do the things that prior to this coaching call just felt so big and unwieldy. And I just thought, oh, what's it going to take to tame that? Turns out it doesn't take that much. And um, so the process of making it more doable, even the process of even that process isn't a big deal. And it's so doable. And I'm excited by that because I thought, am I going to have to embark on this complicated journey of figuring out why I am this way. And as soon as you said how rather than why, the light went off. And I said, that's it. It's not the why, it's the how. And then the how came quite easily. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for being present and available to yourself for these incredible insights to come through. Is there anything that else that needs to be acknowledged? Or are you feeling complete?
Yeah, I don't think there is, Dab. I'm feeling complete and I'm feeling very grateful. So
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay.
If there's only one thing that you take away from today's coaching demo, my hope is that it is this idea of introducing a paradigm in service to supporting around a potential perspective shift. And if you're looking for next steps to take, I would greatly appreciate you rating and reviewing the podcast so that other people may hear about the podcast and receive this valuable information. Thanks again for being a listener. Thank you for being here with me. And always remember that the Holistic Coach legacy is a path, not a destination. Many blessings to you.